To everyone else, he was just a 65-year-old, quiet, tired taxi driver, the kind who waited patiently in traffic, made small talk with customers within polite boundaries, just another ordinary guy. Until a kidnapping operation started in his back seat. Welcome to Silent Heroes Stories. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from today. And if you think stories like this deserve to be heard, smash that subscribe button and help us grow the channel. Frank's real background was pretty messy. Back in the 80s, he'd worked CIA paramilitary programs, especially Central American operations. Close protection, intelligence gathering, crisis response. If it was dangerous and classified, Frank had done it. His final assignment was a diplomat extraction in Nicaragua. That operation changed everything. Lost 2 buddies, got seriously wounded himself. Months of recovery, psych evals, long-term therapy sessions. Finally decided to take early retirement. Moving to Miami wasn't random. The city's cosmopolitan vibe, constantly moving population, mind-your-own-business atmosphere, gave him perfect cover. Cab driving was ideal too. He knew the city inside out, made surface contact with people, but nobody asked him curious questions. He'd been living this life for 30 years. Quiet, peaceful, harmless. Until that night, when everything changed. That Tuesday night started normal enough. Frank had done a few short downtown runs, dropped a couple at the airport. Around midnight, 2 guys flagged him down in South Beach. Soon as he pulled up, something felt off. These dudes wore expensive suits, but it was late, and guys in suits around here were usually tourists. But these cats had zero tourist vibe. Way too careful, constantly scanning their surroundings. "Airport," one said. Accent was unclear, but Frank's ear caught something. Eastern European, probably Russian-speaking countries. They climbed in back. Frank watched them in his rear view. One kept texting, the other stared out the window. Not talking, but their body language screamed tension. When they hit Biscayne Boulevard, a young girl flagged down the taxi from the side of the road. Frank slowed down. "What are you doing?" came from the back seat, voice sharp. "Gotta pick up a fare," Frank said calmly. The guys looked at each other. Then one said, "Fine, but make it quick." Frank stopped the car. The girl ran to the front door and jumped in. About 20 years old, dark hair, out of breath. "Thanks," she said. "I was heading to the airport." Frank nodded and pulled away. But what he saw in his rear view started bothering him. The 2 men in back had changed since the girl got in. One kept staring at her. The other was making phone calls. The girl had called 911. A few minutes later, police sirens were approaching. Frank dropped the gun and put his hands up. When the cops arrived, the girl explained, "These men tried to kidnap me. The driver saved me." Officers turned to Frank. "How'd you handle this situation?" Frank hesitated. "Got lucky. They weren't exactly professionals." But one of the officers, Detective Maria Santos, noticed Frank's moves weren't accidental. "You prior service?" she asked. "Back in the day, yeah," Frank said. Santos didn't push further but studied Frank carefully. After the incident, the girl, they learned her name was Jessica, wanted to thank Frank. "Who are you really?" she asked. "Normal cab drivers don't move like that." Frank was quiet for a long time. Then he took a deep breath and started talking. "Used to work for the government. Long time ago. Dangerous stuff. Then I decided to try the normal life thing. Like CIA dangerous?" Frank nodded. "Those days are behind me. What matters is you're safe." "But who were those guys? Why'd they try to kidnap me?" Frank thought about it. Probably realized you were the wrong person. Or this was completely random crime. Either way, you need to talk to the police. Next day, Frank tried to return to normal, but nothing felt the same anymore. The incident had made the news. He was called a hero cab driver. Even though his name wasn't released, some people were starting to recognize him. Taxi calls were different now. Some customers specifically requested him. Some just for curiosity, others for the security factor. A week later, Jessica visited him. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "You saved my life." "Just did my job," Frank said. "No, you did way more than that. You chose to be a hero." Frank had accepted that he couldn't completely bury his past anymore. Maybe he shouldn't. In a big city like Miami, bad stuff happened every night, and sometimes someone needed to step in. He continued the night shift, but was more observant now, noting suspicious situations, contacting police when necessary. A month later, he faced a similar situation again. This time, a male customer was being threatened. Frank intervened again, less violently, but just as effectively. Slowly, he became known in the neighborhoods as the reliable driver. Women wanting to get home late at night specifically called for him. Frank Morrison wasn't just a taxi driver anymore. He was the guy everyone knew would step between danger and the innocent when necessary. Listening to calls from the taxi radio, sometimes he wanted to withdraw like before, but remembering the fear Jessica experienced that night, he knew he'd done the right thing. For 30 years, he'd tried to run from his past. But maybe he'd realized the past wasn't all bad, that he could use it for a better future. On nights like that one, cruising Miami's streets, Frank Morrison continued to appear as just a taxi driver. But now he looked at every security camera. A few minutes later, one of them spoke up. "Take a right here." Frank objected. "Airport's not this way. We gotta make a stop first," the guy said, voice turning threatening. The girl spun around. "No, I'm only going to the airport." That's when one of the backseat guys reached forward and grabbed her phone. "You're coming with us now," he said. All of Frank's alarm bells started ringing. This was a kidnapping attempt. Frank assessed the situation in his rear view. Two men, probably armed, young girl being held hostage. Intervening while moving in traffic was risky, but waiting could be riskier. His 30-year-old training kicked in automatically. Situation assessment, exit strategies, neutralization techniques. Elderly taxi driver Frank Morrison slowly started disappearing, being replaced by the former CIA operative. "I understand," Frank said in a calm voice. "Where do you want me to go?" One of the backseat guys started giving directions. Industrial area, isolated spot. Frank nodded and began driving that way, but he was also making his plan. Frank knew he had to secure the girl's safety first. Not much room to maneuver inside the car, but his experience gave him alternatives. At a traffic light, when a car behind them honked, Frank used the opportunity. He jerked the steering wheel right, making the car swerve, throwing the back seat passengers off balance. "What the hell?" one shouted. "Sorry, steering problem," Frank said innocently. But that move bought him the time he needed. The girl looked at Frank and he saw hope in her eyes. Frank gave her the slightest nod, looked meaningless, but she understood. At the next red light, Frank put his plan into action. Stopped at the red light, Frank pretended like his engine was having issues. "Hold on, think the motor just died," he said. That's when he made two moves simultaneously. Pulled the emergency brake and threw it into park. Then he spun around fast. CIA training came flooding back. First guy wasn't expecting Frank's move. Frank's punch hit the pressure point on the guy's throat perfectly. Dude couldn't breathe. While the second guy was reaching for his gun, Frank grabbed the girl's arm and shouted, "Out!" She immediately jumped out the front door. Frank also got out and opened the back door. While the second guy was trying to draw his weapon, Frank caught his wrist. Using old techniques, he disarmed the guy. "Who sent you clowns?" Frank asked, not looking like an elderly driver anymore. The guys couldn't answer. One was still trying to breathe, the other was writhing from wrist pain. Different eyes. And if someone needed help again, Frank Morrison knew he'd be ready. Ever meet someone like Frank? Someone who looked ordinary but showed extraordinary courage in critical moments? Share your stories in the comments. If this story hit you right in the feels, don't forget to subscribe. Here at Silent Hero Stories, we bring you these powerful tales every single daily. Different